Nobody really tells you what happens after you score low on an IQ test. They give you a number, and suddenly it feels like people start treating that number like a final answer, like your limits have already been figured out for you. But when you actually look at the science, most people completely misunderstand what intelligence really is. IQ tests measure one narrow type of thinking. They were created more than a century ago to predict how kids would perform in school. That was the entire purpose. That's all it was ever meant to do. But somewhere over time, people started turning it into something bigger. We began treating it like a measurement of human worth. Like it could decide who was supposed to succeed, who deserved leadership, and who mattered more than everyone else. And honestly, that's not just unfair. It's scientifically wrong. Because the people who ended up changing the world usually weren't the ones getting perfect scores on every test. They were the people who understood the test wasn't telling the whole story. So today, I want to talk about something almost nobody gives enough attention to. The ways people with lower measured IQ don't just survive in a world obsessed with intelligence. A lot of times, they succeed in ways people with higher IQs struggle to copy, not despite their differences, because of them. Number 1, you probably developed emotional intelligence most people never even tried to build. When you can't depend on raw mental speed or abstract thinking to carry you through every situation, you start learning how to read people instead. You pay closer attention. You notice tension before anybody says a word. You can tell when someone's hurting, even while they're smiling. Psychology research shows that emotional intelligence, being able to understand, manage, and respond to emotion, is one of the strongest predictors of success in relationships, leadership, and long-term happiness. And this part really matters. IQ and emotional intelligence barely connect at all. One doesn't automatically come with the other, which means the struggles that came with having a lower measured IQ may have pushed you toward building a skill traditional testing completely ignores. Think about the people in your life who just understand you, the ones who always seem to know what to say, the people who make you feel understood without even trying. Most of them probably weren't the people getting the highest grades on every test. They were the people who learned how to understand others because that was the skill they needed most. Number 2, you're probably far more resilient than you think, and resilience is something IQ alone can't give you. Research in developmental psychology shows that kids who struggle academically early on but keep pushing forward develop something called adaptive functioning. That's the ability to handle real-world problems in ways controlled environments can't properly measure. When school constantly tells you you're behind, you eventually face 2 options. You either accept it or you find another path. Every person who chose another path ended up building something no standardized test can measure: persistence, flexibility, recovery. And this isn't just motivational talk. It's neurological. When you repeatedly solve problems without having the same tools other people rely on, your brain literally starts building alternative pathways. You learn how to work with whatever you have available, and honestly, that ability transfers into almost every part of life. Number 3, you're less likely to overthink yourself into doing nothing. This surprises a lot of people. Research on decision-making shows that higher cognitive ability can sometimes increase analysis paralysis. The more possibilities your brain can process at once, the more scenarios it creates, including all the worst-case ones. People with extremely high IQ scores often talk about constant overthinking, struggling with simple decisions, and feeling like no choice is ever fully right because they can always imagine a better option somewhere else. You usually don't deal with that in the same way. You move, you trust your instincts more, you take action, then adjust afterward. And in a world where execution matters more than perfection, that trait isn't a disadvantage, it's an advantage. Some of the most successful entrepreneurs ever have talked openly about trusting instinct, moving before all the information was available, and learning faster through action than endless analysis. That isn't low IQ holding you back. It's a completely different relationship with action, and sometimes it works even better. Number 4, you probably connect with people in a way that creates real loyalty, and honestly, that matters more than most people realize. There's a concept in social psychology called the pratfall effect. It describes how people who show vulnerability, flaws, and imperfection are often trusted and liked more than people who seem polished all the time. And when you think about it, that makes sense. Perfect people feel distant, hard to relate to, but real people feel safe. When you spend years feeling like you're not the smartest person in the room, eventually, you stop trying to prove yourself every second. You stop performing. You become more honest about what you know and what you don't. You start asking questions instead of pretending to already have every answer. You become comfortable saying, "I'm not sure." And strangely enough, that honesty makes people trust you more, not less. Because authenticity has a kind of emotional gravity to it that polished intelligence usually doesn't. People don't build deep loyalty toward the person with the highest IQ in the room. They build loyalty toward the person who makes them feel heard, understood, and emotionally safe. They remember the person who was genuine with them while everyone else was trying to impress them. And if you've spent your life being willing to admit confusion, ask for help without shame, or say, "I don't know," without feeling weak, then you've been practicing one of the most powerful social skills a human being can have. You just probably never realized it counted as one. Number 5, there's a strong chance you've developed a much deeper sense of purpose than you think. Research on meaning and motivation shows that people who go through early struggle, especially academic or intellectual struggle, often end up building a more personal understanding of why they do what they do. Because when the traditional path doesn't fully work for you, you're forced to stop and ask questions most people avoid for years. What do I actually care about? What matters to me personally? What kind of life do I really want? Not what gets rewarded, not what sounds impressive, not what makes other people clap for you. What actually feels meaningful to you when nobody else is watching. And honestly, a lot of high-achieving people never truly ask themselves those questions until later in life, sometimes not until a breakdown, burnout, or identity crisis forces them to. But you may have had to face those questions much earlier. And people who discover purpose early, people who are driven by something personal instead of external approval, usually build lives with far more direction and emotional meaning than people who spent decades chasing a version of success that never actually belonged to them in the first place. Number 6, you understand struggling people in a way that makes you rare. Real empathy isn't equally distributed, and the kind of empathy that genuinely changes people, the kind that makes someone feel safe enough to breathe again, usually comes from lived experience, not theory, not performance, experience. The people who know how to sit with someone in pain are usually the people who've sat in pain themselves. Psychology research consistently shows that people who've experienced failure, rejection, being overlooked, or feeling underestimated tend to become far more emotionally attuned to those same experiences in others. They notice things other people miss. They notice the silence, the hesitation, the fake smile, the exhaustion someone's trying to hide. And that kind of awareness matters everywhere. In parenting, in relationships, in friendships, in leadership, in community. The person who knows what it feels like to be dismissed usually becomes the person who makes others feel included. The person who once felt invisible often becomes the one who notices everyone else standing alone. And in a world where so many people feel unseen, emotionally disconnected, and quietly isolated, that ability matters more than ever. You are not lacking something. You are needed. So here's the thing I really want you to remember after all of this. Intelligence was never just one thing. It was never supposed to be reduced to one number printed on paper. Real intelligence is much bigger than that. It's curiosity. It's emotional awareness. It's persistence. It's creativity. It's knowing how to connect with another human being. It's knowing when to act and when to stay quiet long enough to listen. It's getting back up after life kept trying to convince you to stay down. It's every question you asked, even when you felt embarrassed asking it. Every room you walked into while part of you believed you didn't belong there. You were never just a score. You were always more complicated, more human, and more valuable than something a test could ever measure. And if this video helped you see yourself a little differently today, maybe consider subscribing. Every week, we talk about the hidden strengths inside the traits the world tends to misunderstand. Because the moment you truly start understanding yourself, everything else begins to change too.